Have you ever wanted to have your own radio show? Rebooting Liberty Radio Network currently has openings for live programs. For a very small fee, we will create a show intro, bumper music, and provide technical production for your hour-long show. Email producer@rebootingliberty.com for details. You can find us at live.rebootingliberty.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stocking. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Hey, thanks for being with us. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Kevin Wade. It is Monday, the 9th of November. We're approaching the 11th of November, which is traditional Armistice Day, Veterans Day, where we remember every man and woman who ever served this nation in uniform. And because it's Monday, I am delighted to be joined in the studio by none other than our show's inspirational founder and leader, Rick Trader. Rick?
Kevin, great to be with you again.
And the weather has drifted toward cooler. It's about seasonal at the moment. We had truly a wonderful Saturday.
Sunday was
here,
beautiful.
And Sunday was great, too, here in the Mid-Atlantic. So here in the Philadelphia region, we have had I'll call it like a long Indian summer. You know, the guys selling the heating oil and the natural gas, they're crying tears today. But the rest of us, you know, I haven't turned the central heating on. I mentioned this a week ago. It's been another week that Kevin Wade and family are saving money, Rick Trader.
We haven't had ours on either. You know, you mentioned this beautiful weather. I say, bring on the global warming. Bring on the global warming. Kevin, just think of all the money people have saved this year because they did not have to turn their heater on yet. Yesterday was an absolute beautiful day. It was in the 50s. There was no wind. Beautiful blue skies. The bride and I went and walked along the river. It was a spectacular day.
It was a spectacular day, and you know, that's the nature of weather. You know, it comes in cycles. It comes. We have a tradition of picking out our Christmas tree the first Saturday in November. We go to a Christmas tree farm.
So do we.
And we pick it out like you're picking a kitten out of a litter. Except there's 20,000 kittens on the hillside. But they're all nice. And then we tell them when we want to pick it up, and they have cut it and wrapped it, you know, the day we pick it up, so we have a nice fresh tree. The reason I mention this, Rick, is it's such a family tradition. It's been going on for decades. So I remember times when we dodged snow squalls and bitter, biting cold winds and driving rains and generally seasonable. I mean, we've had all these samples of weather.
Absolutely.
And this was almost a jacketless day this past Saturday. But that's the nature of weather, is that it changes and it goes in cycles. So I'm not going to overreact at anything being too cold or being too warm. It's just weather. We'll let Al Gore get his panties in a twist.
Well, Kevin, we do the same thing. We traditionally go and get our tree the day after Thanksgiving. Actually, Mary starts our decorating, and the house is like a Christmas village. We both love Christmas. The house is like a Christmas village. She starts decorating the week before Thanksgiving. We go and pick up our tree the day after Thanksgiving, a place that we've been going to for 30 years, people that I've known since I was a kid. I love the Christmas season, but you know what's nice, Kevin? All the decorating that we do outside as well as inside. When it's nice weather like this, when it's not freezing and cold and you don't have to wear gloves and mittens and hats, it's beautiful. So it can stay like this. In my opinion, it could stay like this up until about December 10th. Then I want the weather to change. Then I want the snow and the cold because I want to get in the holiday season.
Well, I know that many of our listeners are listening to the broadcast form of Conservative Commandos Radio Network,
Yes.
and we're broadcasting on WNJC 1360 AM. That's our flagship station in Philadelphia. But for those of you scattered about the fruited plains, especially those of you on the West Coast, you have had no private personal hell like having to scrape ice off of your car window at 6:15 in the morning. Okay? On an icy day where you can't even get traction with your feet while you're trying to work the scraper to get the ice off the window before you get into your car to start up that cold car to crunch your way to work. If you live in the West Coast, you don't know what that's like. That's why Rick and I are saying we enjoy this weather so much right now.
Kevin, as I said, I enjoy the snow, I enjoy the cold, but the worst thing about winter is getting in a cold car. Oh, that's like going to you-know-where. It is the worst, getting in a cold car. And as you said, this scraping, and we could do without that, but I do enjoy the changing of the seasons, and I enjoy winter. And as I said, I enjoy the snow.
Well, I enjoy winter after the snow's done, when you have that bright sunshine day. I like that. I don't like the gray overcast, and it's 33 degrees, maybe 32, and the wind is... The weather can get it can get depressing here in January and February. But I want to make a segue over to climate. I don't want to get... I didn't want to get political too early in the show, but I've already done it. We have to be very alert on our side of things, meaning on the fact-based side of things, that we don't let certain repetitive lies be repeated so often and unchallenged that they begin to kind of seep into the public conscious as the truth. I have been seeing more and more often in the past year articles in magazines about generally unrelated matters throw out a quick reference to, and this is driven by man-made global warming or anthropogenic global warming, when in fact that's all up in the air whether or not there is. That's a very unreconciled question. Or do we have man-made global climate change? And I'm seeing this planted in articles about crops, about the type of homes that people build, about the need for irrigation in different parts of the world, about the caloric intake of people in the Middle East. I hear that it's used as an explanation for some of the problems they have in the Middle East today and some of the problems down in South America. I say this because if we begin to accept as a point of truth that man-made global warming is taking place because it's used so casually and so routinely in the mainstream press, we've lost it. Because once you say that this is true, in spite of all the evidence to the contrary, you have given an unlimited license to kill the economy. You're like 007 going after the economy because you've given the government a right to trample on the Constitution, trample on property rights, trample on your income, trample on your wallet, trample on your freedoms as it goes in this pursuit of a holy grail called trying to correct the planet's climate. That's why, until it is proven beyond a reasonable doubt, we're going to keep asking questions. And right now, people asking questions are coming out on top, as I see it, Rick.
Well, Kevin, this whole idea of this man-made global warming, climate change, whatever, is a bunch of hooey. And once more, I'll say this, in the last 100,000 years, we've had 4 ice ages where there's been a sheet of ice that covered North America. In some places, this ice sheet was over 2 miles thick. It happens about every 25,000 years. And I would like to know what people were heating, how they were heating their homes and driving their cars. 12,000 years ago when the last ice age occurred in this area, what were they doing that melted all that ice? I don't know. I would really like to know that answer. And this idea about CO2, it's not a poison, Kevin. It's a plant food.
It's plant food. It's a precursor for life. It's as important as water and sunlight and oxygen.
It's plant food. Without it, there would be nothing green growing on Earth.
Where you find life, you find carbon. You find carbon where you find life. They're inextricably connected.
And Kevin, you cannot destroy matter. It can be changed or altered, but you cannot destroy matter. So CO2, without CO2, this planet would not exist as it is now. It would look something like Mars or the moon, nothing growing, just barren rock. So thank God that we have CO2. And the day that we have no more of it, none of this will be around.
Well, the liberals have hooked on the idea that in the recent past we've seen increases in the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Both those statements are true in the recent past, in the past 100 years, 200 years. However, every gaseous compound in the atmosphere is a greenhouse gas to one degree or another. Some contribute to warming. Some actually reflect the heat, diminish the warming, reflect the solar radiation coming in. Everything has a greenhouse effect property to it. But the predominant greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, by far, carbon dioxide isn't even in the race, but by far is water vapor. Water vapor. 95% of all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and there are many of them, 95% are constituted of water vapor. Now, what does that mean? Well, what that means is it doesn't really matter what carbon dioxide does. Now, let's take a look at the carbon dioxide contribution, which is very small to the total greenhouse gas effect of all gases. And most of the carbon dioxide released into the world this year comes from natural sources. Natural sources. Natural sources. So if carbon dioxide is not the main contributor to greenhouse gases, why are we getting all tangled up in knots? And if the predominant proportion of carbon dioxide that is put in the atmosphere comes from plants and animals, then why are we putting people out of work in Detroit? And with that, my friends, it is November the 9th. It's a Monday. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm joined by Rick Trader. And as you know, we're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network Studios, WNJC 1360 AM. And that's our flagship station in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet at CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, Talk Stream Live, The Funded Press, HHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, War Radio, rebooting a Liberty Radio Network, and AM, FM 24/7. Hey, we're going to take a break for about 3 minutes. You stay with us. We will be right back. I've got a commentary to do when we come back from the break. You stay with us.
They say I'm crazy. I
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Hey, thank you for staying with us. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our websites, www.ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, or at 1 p.m. log on to www.roarradio.net. That's roarradio.net. Or at 6 p.m. log on to thepunditpress.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any telephone anywhere on the planet by calling 832-999-1199. Rick, it's Monday, and what has caught your eye in the news?
Well, it continues to be about the election. There's another debate tomorrow night.
Very good.
Which is going to be interesting. We'll see if the debate tomorrow night is much different from the debate of a week or two ago when it turned out to be a real sham by CNBC. But in conducting a sham, I do think all CNBC did was put a light on its liberal media bias.
I think it put a light on the mainstream media bias. I think that was like one of these moments where people look back to, when there used to be a dispute, whether or not there was bias, that all was cleared up that night in October when CNBC said, why did your mother hate you? Why don't you stop getting such cheap haircuts?
When did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah. It's a legitimate question. People want to know. I heard our President Obama last week said, how in the world do these Republicans expect to be able to sit down and deal with the Chinese and the Russians if they can't deal with CNBC? And my answer, President Obama, I want to talk to our friends at the National Security Agency. Please send this copy of this broadcast to the White House tonight. Okay, let me get back to it. And my answer to President Obama is this. Actually, the Republican candidates across the board handled CNBC very, very well. They actually recognized CNBC for what it is. Mm-hmm. They named it, they pointed at it, they packaged it, and they froze it in position. And the Republican candidates across the board won that debate that night because they won against the mainstream media and the bias demonstrated by CNBC.
And, you know, Kevin, not to change the subject, but depending upon when you celebrate it, be it today, be it November 11th, I want to thank our men and women in the service today and in the past for protecting our country, for giving us or for allowing us to have the greatest country on God's blue-green planet up to today.
Amen. And the greatest soldiers and the greatest sailors, the greatest airmen and the greatest Marines. I mean, we truly have the best fighting force ever put on this planet.
In spite of the government that we have today.
In spite of the political leadership. So if you wear the uniform, God bless you. I'm so glad that you are there.
Amen to that.
Rick, what I'd like to do in the remaining part of this segment is to do my Monday afternoon commentary. I call this We Can't Live with This Disease. Apparently, the Ferguson disease has spread. This is a disease marked by imaginary symptoms. There's no fever to be measured. X-rays and CAT scans show nothing, and any blood work reports from the lab are unremarkable. It's an illness that lives and manifests itself in the imagination of its victims. You saw an outbreak earlier in its namesake town, Ferguson, Missouri. There, an overweight small-town thug strong-armed a shop owner while he robbed the man's shop, attacked a police officer, tried to grab the officer's firearm, was repelled, then charged the officer again. At this point, he was shot dead. The perpetrator was no hero. He was just a thug with a violent attitude, some marijuana in his system, and a terminal lack of judgment. It was a tragedy, as is the loss of any human life. However, the weight of the tragedy is carried and borne by the perpetrator, not by the police or anyone else. Now, this is where the disease takes hold, the Ferguson disease. Many in the black community of Ferguson could not understand the facts in the event because they chose to understand instead their imaginations. Imagination is so kind, and facts are so hard and so unyielding. This imaginary story made for more drama. It appealed to those living in Ferguson who refuse the responsibility for their own lives and making their own decisions. The imaginary story blamed that all-important group called, quote-unquote, someone else. It was even better for some few who were black, thankfully very, very few, to have that someone else be white. This imaginary story took on the profile of an ancient, long-retired fable of racism. It was this imaginary scene that, promoted by scurrilous media, led in reality to fires, looting, assaults, shootings, and arrests. Much of this was led by people from other places, riot tourists, if you will. Ferguson has been gutted. It won't come back. Whatever sense of community it once had is gone. This is what happens when imagination and agitation replace reality and responsibility. I open this commentary by saying the Ferguson disease has spread. I should have said it's spread again. It's already visited Baltimore and New York, leaving its residual and unavoidable scarring on those communities. Now it has entered academia. The current hot zone in this outbreak is at the University of Missouri. There at its main campus, the head of the student government apparently feels that he lives in a racist country. This, of course, is an illusion. He wants the university administration to ease and comfort his sensitivities and feelings about this. The administration can do this in one of two ways. They can officially share his illusion and express outrage at this imaginary scene with official pomp and authority. The administration can also actively engage in witch hunts, seeking to punish anyone associated with campus life who fails to see the emperor's new clothes and adhere to the new religion of hands up, don't shoot, white privilege, and pixies in the glen and unicorns in the sky. The football team has joined, as had a few of the usual suspects among the faculty. Just today, the university's president resigned. He inflamed the delusional crowd by refusing to admit white privilege and saying a few weeks ago, and I paraphrase, that you are oppressed if you choose willingly to believe it. It was his reference to reality and responsibility that set the chronic complainer's hair on fire. When your beliefs are delusional, there is no greater insult than to face you with facts and reality. You see, if you think you are Napoleon Bonaparte, you get very angry if someone tells you that you're not. Maybe the Ferguson disease will, like many outbreaks, burn itself out and remain contained. However, to be sure, we don't get overtaken by a national epidemic. It is time, and more than time, to confront and eradicate this disease. The antidote and the remedy is a steady and unyielding injection of the truth. The more unvarnished and raw that is the truth, the quicker and surer the cure. We cannot be tolerant of this disease. Although it appears to only afflict the young and inexperienced, it truly is a deadly threat to the life of this land, and this land of truth, courage, and freedoms. I'm Kevin Wade, and that's the way I see it, Rick.
Kevin, another great commentary. When you talk about the Ferguson disease, in my opinion, that this new outbreak of this disease, this new outbreak of racism, starts with patient zero. In my opinion, that patient zero is Barack Obama. And it didn't start this year or this past year. It started very early in his presidency when Henry Louis Gates, a professor at Harvard, was confronted by police as Professor Gates was trying to break into his house. The police saw this. The police saw a man going through a window, and in my opinion, the police did what police should do. Stopped the man and questioned him. Well, that gentleman and the police had a confrontation, but it was Barack Obama who used that confrontation, in my opinion, to inflame things when he said the police acted stupidly. Is it any coincidence today that we have a rash of shooting of police officers? I don't think so.
Patient zero. Very good, Rick. Very good. Hey, we're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, Rebooting Liberty Radio Network, AM/FM 24/7. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm Rick Trader. We're going to take a quick break. You stay with us. We will be right back with our first guest.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm messy, but
You've heard Paul Delps playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience means to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Hey, thanks for staying with us. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm joined by Rick Trader. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m., log on to leadingedgeradionetwork.com, or at 1 p.m., log on to www.roarradio.net, roarradio.net. And at 6 p.m., log on to thepunditpress.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any telephone anywhere on planet Earth by calling 832-999-1199. Some toll charges just might apply. Check with your cell phone and service supplier. I'm Kevin Wade. We have lucky to have a recurring guest with us. J.D. Gordon is a former Pentagon spokesman who served under both Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and Secretary Bob Gates from 2005 to 2009, and is a retired Navy commander. Since leaving the Defense Department, he has served as a senior fellow in communications, policy advisor to numerous think tanks, foundations, and national political figures, including former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin and former presidential candidate Herman Cain. J.D. Gordon is a contributing columnist to Fox News and the Washington Times since 2010. He's regularly appeared as a national security and foreign policy commentator on a wide variety of international, national, and local Washington, D.C. Television and radio outlets. And with that, let me say, J.D. Gordon, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Rick. Always a pleasure.
You have a column out, Obama's A Little Secrets, on Gitmo closure. I fear the story you're about to tell us, but I'm going to invite that anyway. What was the theme of your column about Gitmo closures?
Well, thank you so much for the ability to discuss it today. It's something that's very important. It's a security nightmare for Americans, and people ought to know what exactly President Obama's secrets are in Guantanamo, and there's two. It's my column's on Fox News Opinion. They could take a look at it there. The first one is that judges could release them. That's right on to Main Street, USA. And that's because we have three branches of government that are equal in the United States per our Constitution. We've got the executive branch, that's the White House, the legislative branch, the Congress, and the judicial branch headed by the Supreme Court. So once you talk about locking people up, the White House is just one branch of government. Now, when it comes to locking people up, the superior, if you will, among equals, the greater among equals, actually is the Justice Department. So my point is, judges could release them because the White House couldn't hold them even if they wanted to. And one of the reasons I know that is I was a Pentagon spokesman for 4 years. We had 3 enemy combatants held at the Charleston Brig, South Carolina. Well, Kevin, they're not there today. Why? Because judges release them. So if President Obama brings detainees from Guantanamo to Colorado, to Kansas, to South Carolina, judges would release many of them because we don't have the evidence to keep them. That doesn't mean they're not dangerous. It just means we didn't have the evidence. We didn't have battlefield detectives running after these guys in Afghanistan or Pakistan. So that's secret number one. Judges could release them. Secret number two is, I believe, that the president wants to give Guantanamo Naval Base back to the Cubans, because he's tried to make all these overtures to the Cubans, to basically any dictator that's opposed to us, whether it's the Iranians on the nuclear deal, whether it's the Russians on the reset button. President Obama is always trying to please our enemies because he thinks they're going to be nicer. Well, they've become even more nasty, so that hasn't worked. And why do I say that he wants to do that? Why does he want to give Guantanamo back to the Cubans? Well, because the Cubans are demanding it. They say it's occupied territory. And if you go to Latin America, I've traveled to Latin America dozens of times. I lived there for 3 years when I was a Navy spokesman. In Latin America, the left and even people in the middle say the U.S. is the empire, especially the leftists. The countries like Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Cuba, Nicaragua, they say the U.S. is the empire. You say, well, how could you dare say that? Why would you say that? And the first thing they point to is Guantanamo. They say it belongs to the Cubans. You have a lease. The Cubans don't want you there. You're ignoring their wishes. It's occupied territory. They should get it back. So if President Obama can release Guantanamo Naval Base, if he can get rid of all the detainees, he can give the base back. That'll be like Jimmy Carter giving back the Panama Canal to the Panamanians, because these guys, these presidents, don't think the U.S. Is a country that's fought for good, I think. They think the United States is an empire, just like the left thinks. So I think Guantanamo will be Barack Obama's Panama Canal.
Now, J.D., let me ask a question. Why cannot a federal judge release the prisoners today that are held in Gitmo?
They can and they have, but there's nowhere for them to go. They're not going to walk outside of the base in Cuba. The only way to get rid of them is for other countries to take them, and many countries won't take them. And in some cases, the detainees don't even want to go to the countries. The Uyghurs, for instance, there were 22 of them. They're from China, and they're Turkic folks, and they didn't want to go back to China because they'd be executed if they went to China. The Uyghurs have all gone, but out of the 112 there, about half of those are determined to be in indefinite a detention status, and many of those are Yemeni. Now, Yemen's fell apart completely. It's completely fell apart. So why would we send the detainees to Yemen when they can't even hold prisoners they have now? I mean, the government's collapsed in Yemen.
That can't be true.
Taken over by a rebel movement.
JD, it's Kevin here. That can't be true because just a year ago, in December last year, President of the United States was touting Yemen as one of his success stories. Are you telling me that wasn't true, JD?
Well, the president says a lot of things that we come to find out are not really the case, and he doesn't tell us some things, like he just said we have to get Bo Bergdahl back. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Here's a guy who walked off post, right? And the president gave up the top 5 Taliban leaders at Guantanamo. These just weren't any regular guys on the street corner Taliban street-level guys. This was the deputy intel minister, the deputy defense minister, 2 former governors, the provincial security chief. This was the cream of the crop of the Taliban. He let them go from Guantanamo for a deserter. But yet President Obama said it was a good deal for us. And then he had Bo Bergdahl's father in the Rose Garden praising Allah. I mean, that's the kind of leadership you get from this White House.
That's the kind of leadership we don't get from this White House, and I believe that there will be books written for the next 20 years doing some psychoanalysis of what in the world goes on in President Obama's head. So I now understand a federal judge could order a detainee to be released from Gitmo, but he's just walking around the naval base at that point. Whereas if he's in a max security place out in Colorado and he's ordered released, he's walking around Denver or Colorado Springs. That's an entirely different story for the American people.
Right. That's exactly right.
Now, J.D., what is a proper role? Well, I'm going to have to hold this up. What I want you to think about is why can't we rely on the Congress to block this? Think about that while we go through this break, and I want to continue this conversation on the other side of the break. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network Studios, WNJC 1360 AM, our flagship station in Philadelphia and around the world on the Internet, with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, Rebooting Liberty Radio Network, AM/FM 24/7. Face it, guys, you can't get away from this show. It's going to track you down over the Internet. I'm Kevin Wade. You stay with us. We will be right back.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the Internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. log on to the Leading Edge Radio Network, or at 1 p.m. log on to www.roarradio.net. And at 6 p.m., log on to thepunditpress.com. Now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. We have on the phone J.D. Gord, a former Pentagon spokesman, and he's talking about Obama's little secrets on Gitmo closure. J.D., thank you for staying with us.
Thanks, Kevin.
And I'll tell you, we've got a president who just continually assaults our dignity and goes out of his way to get humiliated on the world stage. And how many, J.D., how many terrorists are still held down at Gitmo?
There's 112 there today, but if the president gets his way, he's going to empty out the place. We'll have none.
Okay, so they won't be confined anymore. They'll be out wandering around, or perhaps he can find someone who will take them. But you said the 112 who are still there are the ones that truly nobody wants. Not even a mother could love these.
Well, they're that, and also these are some of the world's worst terrorists. They have the 9/11 co-conspirators there, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the other four. They've got al-Nashiri there, who's the coal mastermind, the coal bombing mastermind. We have the Hambali, who was he's an Indonesian guy, and he was the mastermind behind the Bali bombings. So really, this is the worst of the worst terrorists, and even of the 112, the Obama administration's cleared about half of them for release, and the ones they cleared for release are no gems either. They're Bin Laden bodyguards. These are guys who are trained in suicide operations. These are instructors in bomb making and weapons, and so these aren't gems either. These aren't innocent guys, but they still want to release about half of them. So basically, they would transfer as many as they couldn't release, and the other half to the U.S. prisons. They're looking at places like Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the Charleston Brig in South Carolina, a facility in Colorado, which would basically put a bullseye on those communities, because fellow jihadists would try to free their locked up people they say are being martyred, basically.
Yeah, nothing like seizing an elementary school and wanting to do a trade. But let me get back, because my co-host, Rick Trader, has a question for you, but I want to get back to this one thing. What is it that the Congress could do to block this release of these terrorists out of Gitmo? And let's just look at that first question. What can Congress do to block this?
Well, it's already against the law. The Congress has already passed laws, both branches, to come together to pass laws every year that forbids any money to go to transferring any detainees into the United States. But the president seems to want to do it anyway, because the Congress was very upset still that the president broke the law when he released those 5 Taliban guys for Bo Bergdahl. The law said Congress has to be notified 30 days in advance. The president didn't do it. He broke the law, and he got away with it, because the alternative is to impeach him, right? And so then Barack Obama and the left comes back and say, oh, the Republicans are after Obama. They want to impeach him. And then it's a whole other argument that goes down that road. So I was on a conference call this morning, actually, with 3 senators, Senator Roberts from Kansas, Senator Gardner from Colorado, and Senator Scott from South Carolina. And Senator Roberts said, look, I don't want him in Fort Leavenworth, and so I put a hold on the president's nominee for Secretary of the Army. So there's not a lot of leverage other than passing laws, which they've done. There's not a lot of leverage other than like blocking military promotions or holding up nominees. The president is pretty much run roughshod over Congress, and unfortunately, there's just not a lot of leverage to have besides passing laws. The president's ignoring them sometimes.
What about? I think holding up promotions to the general among the general officers would have a bracing effect on our career leadership in the military.
President Obama doesn't care about that.
do have to report.
I mean, look, he's already fired 200 of our top military leaders, admirals, generals, captains, colonels. That's the most of any administration since World War II. So that's really no problem for the president.
Yeah, but if the remaining generals and full colonels could not get the next star or get the first star from Congress because that's going to be controlled by a Republican House if they take part in any way in the dispatch and transfer of terrorists from Guantanamo, it unfortunately puts them between a rock and a hard place, but perhaps it provides some additional pressure. In any event, my co-host Rick Trader has a question for you, JD.
JD, before I ask my question, I want to thank you and all our servicemen and women for what you've done to make, as I said earlier, the United States the greatest country in God's blue-green planet. We bless you for your military service in the past and what you do for our country today. JD, playing devil's advocate a little bit, how would you answer a question if somebody would ask you, well, how important is Gitmo today, not just as a prison to house these detainees, but as a strategic military base?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate the kind words as well for me and the veterans. I think Guantanamo is very important. We've had it for over a century. It's been a very important logistics base for the United States and continues to be so. It's strategically located in the Windward Passage there between, it's on Cuba, but it's very close to Haiti and Dominican Republic and Jamaica. So if we weren't there, I think you'd see narco trafficking go up significantly there. So we have used the base for over 100 years. I think it's still important. As far as the detention mission, it's the next best place to say Afghanistan, which isn't really a good place. In Afghanistan, we've seen what's happened there. There's jailbreaks all the time. So even though Guantanamo isn't the perfect place, it's the best place we have, and we haven't had another 9/11. That's why I think that Guantanamo should be still used. I don't think it should be closed until we have a better system in place. And the better system, Rick, means changing our laws in the United States so we could lock these guys up, because right now the Gitmo guys would go free, not because they're innocent, not because they're not dangerous, just because we don't have the evidence collected from the battlefield. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't lock them up. Did we give 500,000 Nazis a trial? Heck no. We only gave a few dozen at Nuremberg.
Right.
So I think it's the same thing here. People have to realize we're at war, and the president's agenda for the United States should be stop trying to weaken us.
JD, the other question I had for you is, what about, again, referring to your article, Secret Number 1, if and when detainees are moved stateside, judges could release them across America. And what alarm went off in my head is I'm sure there'd be groups or individuals that would use judge shopping to find a judge sympathetic with them to release these prisoners. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's what happens. It happens all the time, judge shopping. Look, we had 3 enemy combatants at the Charleston Brig during the Bush administration when I was a Pentagon spokesman. They're not there today because federal judges pressured for their release. So even if the White House wanted to keep these guys locked up, they wouldn't have the authority, Rick.
What happened to combatants who were not in military uniform who were picked up in World War II?
Well, we had almost 500,000 German Nazis here in the U.S. I mean, they were living in camps throughout the U.S. They weren't tried. They stayed until the end of the war. At the end of the war, they went back. Even there were handfuls that even stayed here and married local women, etc. Those were the Germans during World War II, almost 500,000. But the only guys that were tried was just a few dozen at Nuremberg during the war crime trials there. So basically, the war against Al-Qaeda is not ending anytime soon until the radical Islamists stop attacking us. We got to hold these guys because they're just going to go back to the battlefield. Nearly a third of them already did go back to the battlefield that left Guantanamo. So we're in a tough spot. This isn't just like guys knocking off a liquor store, right? You know, we're talking about guys who could kill thousands, if not tens of thousands of Americans. Only 19 guys killed 3,000 on 9/11, and God forbid they get their hands on chemical weapons or poison reservoirs like a lot of them wanted to. They could kill a lot of Americans, just a few guys.
Yeah, but JD, when you pick up a combatant who's not wearing a uniform,
well, they were executed, actually. There were some that were executed who weren't wearing uniforms. But remember, there was a case of Germans, I believe there were 10 of them, and they were going to try to sabotage the power grid along the East Coast. Well, they were executed. I believe there were 10 of them.
Yeah, and that was actually reviewed by the Supreme Court. They said go ahead and execute him, and the president refused to issue a pardon or a pause. So, and also there were people in Europe who were wearing American uniforms, Germans wearing American uniforms around the Battle of the Bulge, and they were executed as well. And there were people who had altered their uniforms in World War II around the time of the Battle of the Bulge, who had removed SS insignia and such, and they also were executed.
Oh, yeah, we'd lose World War II today with this type of mentality. Could you imagine the United States actually getting tough on Germany or Japan? Under President Obama, it would never happen. We would lose. What? Absolutely. I mean, President Obama is so reluctant for even one civilian casualty in Iraq and Syria. We don't want civilian casualties, of course, but he's so reluctant. That's why the strikes against the Islamic State are so light, because the president doesn't want any civilian casualties. Could you imagine trying to fight World War II that way?
JD,
I mean, not only is it's preposterous. We would completely lose if that was the case today.
JD, if we've gleaned all the information that we can from these individuals, why don't we simply turn them over to their native countries and allow local cultural justice do its work? We're not here to be the cultural imperialists of the world, and if someone in China or in Saudi Arabia has a view as to what should happen to their fellow citizen when he's returned home, why is it our business?
Well, the Chinese would execute them, and so we have a policy where we don't want to have the prisoners executed. We don't want to have them tortured because we didn't torture any detainees there, and we don't want them to actually be tortured. That's why we didn't give the Uyghurs back to China. As far as the Saudis, they have a rehabilitation program for jihadists. The Saudis give these guys girlfriends. Can you believe it? They give them a lot of money. They have like a 6-month boot camp where they give them art classes, psychology classes, debates, and about 90% of the jihadists who go through the Saudi rehabilitation don't go back to the battlefield, which is better than the average for Guantanamo detainees. The average is about 2/3 don't go back to the battlefield. So the Saudi program's a little more effective, but most of the guys there now are from Yemen. But Yemen's a failed state. The government's been toppled. It's run by the Shia Houthi rebels who are aligned with Iran. So there's no government to give them back to in Yemen. And even if we did, I mean, Yemen has prison breaks all the time, so the detainees would get out.
JD, I think this recidivism rate is based on the quality of the girlfriend. JD?
Maybe.
JD, could you quickly tell our audience, because we're hard up against the end of this segment, could you quickly tell our audience how to follow your writings?
Sure thing. My column's at Fox News Opinion, and my website is protectamericatoday.com.
JD Gordon, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Rick.
If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. log on to leadingedgeradionetwork.com, or at 1 p.m. log on to roarradio.net, and at 6 p.m. log on to thepunditpress.com. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone on the planet by calling 832-999-1199. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm joined by J.D. No, I'm not. We actually just had J.D. Gordon with us. I've lost a step. I'm here in the studio with Rick Trader, and we'll be in the studio when we come back from this break. You stay with us.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
You've heard Paul Delks playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired as I am about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Hey, thanks for staying with us. I'm Kevin Wade, joined by Rick Trader. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. log on to the leadingedgeradionetwork.com. And at 1 p.m. log on to roarradio.net, and at 6 p.m. log on to the Pundit Press. Now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos at any time from any phone on the planet by calling 832-999-1199. We always start out the week here on Mondays on Conservative Commandos with really the best guest for the week to give us a little momentum. And joining us now is a returning guest. Hans von Spakovsky is an authority on a wide range of issues, including civil rights, civil justice, the First Amendment, immigration, the rule of law, and government reform. As a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. And I'll tell you what, he's got an interesting column about criminalizing scientific dissent And with that, he'll tell us about it. So welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Hans von Spakovsky.
Well, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. Yeah, you know, you just have to wonder sometimes about government officials. Last week, the New York Times reported that the Attorney General of New York has subpoenaed all these records and opened up an investigation of ExxonMobil. And you might think, oh my gosh, for what? Some kind of terrible criminal activity? No, for supposedly denying that climate change is happening, if you can believe that.
Yeah, and I read a bit about this, and the state of New York is making some claims that they've misled their investors on the hazards of climate change. And what I think they're trying to get around to is the risk of unreasonable government interference and regulation in their business, incorrectly labeled as a response to climate change. So it's not climate change that is the problem for ExxonMobil. It's the potential of government interference in their business model.
Well, yeah, and the whole problem here is that. You know, I think what the AG is saying, well, you may have misled your investors by denying that climate change is happening or that it's going to affect how you do your business. But the whole problem with that is that climate change is a scientific theory that is unproven and over which there is great debate and dissent. And yet they are launching potentially a criminal investigation of a company over a scientific theory. I mean, this is, it's so, I mean, look, I don't use the word un-American very often, but this really is un-American. You know, we have a very fundamental First Amendment right. That includes, by the way, corporations. And the idea that you would sue a company over what is a contentious scientific theory, not facts, it to me is just crazy. I mean, that's the kind of thing that used to happen in the Soviet Union, not America.
It sounds like Copernicus or Galileo back in the Middle Ages.
No, that's exactly right. You know, Galileo, actually, there's a lot of parallels here, because remember, Galileo was persecuted by the Inquisition because he didn't agree with the consensus of the times about how the universe and the solar system were organized, which is very similar to all these folks today who say, oh, there's all this consensus out there that climate change is happening and that man is the chiefly responsible for that. Well, in fact, there's a lot of dissenters from that, and these are reputable scientists, but everyone is afraid to speak out because of things like what the Attorney General of New York is doing.
Because certainly the Attorney General will fail in these efforts, but he will spend a lot of the company's money in his ultimate failure, and that money it won't go for payroll, and it won't go for benefits, and it won't go for new research. And but I think the problem is with Galileo, he disputed whether or not the Earth was at the center of the solar system.
Correct.
Okay, and I mean, if I recall, I wasn't there at the time, but I've had it passed on to me. But the Attorney General of New York, who works for Governor Cuomo, I believe he's a liberal Democrat, he disputes whether or not ExxonMobil recognizes that President Barack Obama is at the center of the solar system. And this is what has really caused him to unleash the dogs on ExxonMobil. Now, ExxonMobil doesn't have any drilling activities in New York, and I suspect they have very few refining operations, and he has to be very careful that they don't pull all of their operations out of the Empire State as a result, because corporations, being living things, can move to avoid the pain.
No, that's true, although they're clearly refining what they're doing based on these kind of threats, because, in fact, if you look at there was a New York Times story about this that revealed this so far secret investigation, and in it you'll see the spokesman for ExxonMobil saying, oh, well, look, they shouldn't be coming after us, basically because we stopped funding any kind of research the focus of which was the scientific uncertainty of the science here. And so clearly the research grants are already have already started drying up for anyone who might disagree with the climate change theory. And that, I think, is actually one of the purposes of this, is to do exactly that.
Hans, I fear that we're living in a post-constitutional America.
I'm afraid you're right, and that just keeps getting worse, not just from what the federal government's been doing, but now states like New York.
Well, he's trying to, the Attorney General there is trying to make his bone, so to speak, as we say in the mafia, so that he qualifies for high office in the future in Washington.
Yeah, because when it comes to Democrats, boy, if you're not all behind climate change as being the most dangerous, biggest threat to America, not Red China, not the expansion of Russia, not Middle Eastern terrorism. No, the biggest threat to us is the fact that maybe, perhaps, possibly in the future, there might be a minuscule increase in temperature around the world.
And well, that's a state of. If you recall, there was this blowout in the Gulf of Mexico. Maybe I guess about 6 years ago now. Blowout on an offshore drilling, deep water, Gulf of Mexico, and for reasons that I could never sort out, the administration, the Department of Justice in Washington, went completely around the rule of law and just decided to negotiate a $20 billion settlement with who the heck was it? BP. And BP never had a day in court, and they just knuckled under because of fear that in this post-constitutional America, almost anything can happen. So the truth, I guess, they say the truth is the first casualty of war. Well, I think we're now in a political environment where the truth is also an early casualty. Hans, where do we go from here?
I think that's right.
What do we do to push back on this? What do we do to set the scales right? Because we have to keep fighting.
Well, frankly, look, it's often hard to stop things like this. I would encourage these companies not to knuckle under. In fact, they ought to fight back. Unfortunately, I think too many corporate leaders are not willing to fight, and part of it, frankly, is also public criticism, like what we're doing here today, to try to embarrass people about it. Look, this is very similar. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article about the fact that 20 academics at all these different universities had written a letter to President Obama and Loretta Lynch, the U.S. Attorney General, asking them to prosecute criminally under the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, the RICO law, organizations that were out there saying that there might be a problem with this climate change theory. I mean, that's how far the other side has gone with this.
And it sounds reasonable to them.
It does sound reasonable to them, which is just it's just shocking.
Well, once you get the work camps built, it's just a matter of putting people in the barracks. Hans, I want you to stay with us because I want to continue this conversation, but we have to, we're still an outpost of free enterprise here, and we have to do some commercial work for about 3 minutes.
Well, go right ahead. I'm always happy to hear about that.
We're on the phone with Hans von Spakovsky, and he's shedding a light where light needs to be shed about the crazy activities in the Empire State of New York, where apparently they think it's illegal to dissent on climate change. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm joined by Rick Trader. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show. We're coming to you live from WNJC 1360 AM studios near Philadelphia and around the world on the internet at CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, and more and more and more. Stay with us. It gets bigger every week. We're going to come back. You stay with us.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding. to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. Log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, and that ends in .com. Or 1 p.m., log on to Roar Radio. At 6 p.m., log on to the Pundit Press. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. We're on the phone with Hans von Spakovsky of the Heritage Foundation, and we're talking about this craziness up in the Empire State where the Attorney General is trying to criminalize scientific dissent. That's like saying, I don't believe this is true because the evidence doesn't demonstrate it's true. Criminalize scientific dissent on climate change. Hans, thank you for staying with us.
Sure, happy to do it.
So how does our side push back? Is there any reaction, say, in New York State itself? Does ExxonMobil have any friends there who are kind of standing up and saying you've gone too far? Does the Constitution have any friends there who say you've gone too far?
I didn't hear a lot. I didn't hear a lot of criticism, including from the company, about what the Attorney General was doing. The U.S. Constitution certainly protects them because of the First Amendment, and this is a clear attempt by the state government to violate the First Amendment rights of the company. Like I said, I think they ought to fight back. I think they ought to go to court and try to get an injunction to stop what the Attorney General is doing and base it on the First Amendment.
And exactly what is the Attorney General trying to do? I mean, is he trying to get a financial settlement, a cease and desist order? Is he trying to get them to change their hiring policy and hire some of his friends?
Well, right now, what we know from the article, apparently it's a secret investigation. It's been going on for a year, but the latest was that they had subpoenaed extensive financial records, emails, and other documents from the company, and that's clearly the prelude to trying to decide whether they want to launch a civil or criminal prosecution of the company.
Chilling. And just in the interest of maintaining a level of profits, you will find boards of directors that will say, let's play this game, let's go along. And all of a sudden you have more distorted voices in the chorus telling everyday Americans that what's wrong is actually right. And we have a lack of any balanced disputation and argumentation or debate about the role of Washington in determining what type of fuels we use. How about on the Republican Party side? How about our old friends in the Republican Party, those champions of liberty? Surely they're standing up.
Well, look, there are certainly folks in Congress, frankly, in both the Senate and the House, who've been very strong on these issues and have done everything they can to do oversight, for example, of the federal government to stop the kind of, frankly, excessive unilateral actions that the president has engaged in. So, no, they've actually been pretty good. And like I said, there have been lawsuits also filed by particular public interest groups, also going after companies, trying to say that they violated public nuisance laws, power companies, so forth. Most of those have lost. So that's actually been a good sign. What is a bad sign here, like I said, is a state attorney general now putting his nose into this, getting the government involved in trying to do this.
Hans, and I know we're in a post-constitutional phase here of our beloved republic, but doesn't the Constitution prohibit an individual state seeking to restrain interstate trade and commerce?
Oh, it certainly does, and that is another claim that I think the company could certainly make, particularly when, as you said, they don't seem to have any. I don't think they have any refineries in New York. So what is the basis for the Attorney General going after them? I think that could be part of a defensive lawsuit if ExxonMobil was willing to spend the time and money to do that.
My co-host today, Rick Trader, has a question.
Hans, here on the Conservative Commandos radio show, we're speaking with Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation. And Hans, what bothers me about this, I've seen so many instances, and just in my short life of being older than dirt, of verbal engineering preceding social engineering. So you got this crazy attorney general in New York who starts this, and then you'll get another crazy attorney general in California, and then another crazy one in New Jersey. And that's the problem that I see, this snowballing effect, and that they don't have the facts. But Hans, what I wanted to ask you is please explain to our audience who Big Oil really is, who ExxonMobil really is, and who all would be affected by these kinds of crazy lawsuits.
Well, look, ExxonMobil is one of the favorite devil incarnates of the left. Always referring to this huge evil corporation. But look, they're a public corporation. That means the people who own them are all the shareholders across the United States and other parts of the world who own the company. And this kind of investigation, and in fact, look, the New York Times article about this was saying that the Wall Street analysts were very critical, saying they didn't know what effect this might have on the company. So that means that everybody across the country who's invested, and that includes people with pensions and 401k plans, they're the ones who will be hurt by what the Attorney General is doing, particularly if he files some kind of frivolous lawsuit and tries to get some big settlement from the company.
And you could also add into that the consumer that has to pay higher costs because here ExxonMobil is spending money to defend themselves. How do they make money? They make exactly money by selling products to the consumer.
Yeah, and listen, I think all of us have been happy in recent days, in recent weeks, because the price of gas has gone way down. I'm paying one of the lowest prices I've paid in years at the gasoline pump. But this kind of thing, particularly, Rick, if, as you say, other AGs from other states start jumping on the bandwagon and trying to go after them, that could cause gas prices to go up all over the country.
Especially if ExxonMobil yields to the extortion and writes a fat check to the Attorney General's office in New York. That will certainly prompt other states to say, I want my piece of pie.
No, that's exactly right. Now, the one thing I can say that we're very fortunate of is this. Listen, in the last 5 years, there have been some great attorney generals that have gotten elected in places like Texas and Alabama and Louisiana, and they are the ones that have been fighting back, like in the lawsuit that a majority of them filed against the Obama immigration amnesty plan that he came up in November. So those AGs have been, frankly, very good at countering some of the more liberal AGs like Mr. Schneiderman in New York.
Wasn't Elliot Spitzer a former attorney general in New York?
Yeah, I think he was, wasn't he?
Odd.
Before he had a few problems.
No, just checking the bloodline, so to speak. Looking at the genealogy of how you become an attorney general in the Empire State. Our broadcast over the air does not reach New York State. I think maybe things would be different if we had another 5,000 watts on the transmitter. But if you're one of our listeners on the internet, and I know we have many across the Fruited Plains, please talk to your neighbors because someone's really detached from reality in Albany. Hans, we're coming up on the end of our segment. Could you tell our listeners how to stay current with your impressive writings?
Well, thank you. Well, I'm at the Heritage Foundation. That's heritage.org, heritage.org, and most of the stuff that I write is all posted there. And even when I write elsewhere, like at National Review, they usually repost it at Heritage.
Hans von Spakovsky, thank you so much for being with us on the Conservative Commandos Radio Network.
Kevin, Rick, thanks a lot for having me.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. Log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, or at 1 p.m. log on to www.roar.net, and at 6 p.m. log on to the Pundit Press, theyallended.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any telephone on the planet by simply calling 832-999-1199. That's 832-999-1199. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm joined by Rick Trader. You stay with us. We'll be right back in about 3 minutes.
You see, I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
You've heard Paul Delks playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m., not 8:58, not 8:59, 9 a.m. Get your coffee ready, 9 a.m., log on to Leading Edge Radio Network. At 1 p.m., just after lunch, before you take that afternoon snooze, go to www.roarradio.net, roarradio.net, and at 6 p.m., just before you have the evening nightcap, log on to thepunditpress.com, and you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. It is a Monday, the 9th of November, in the year of our Lord 2015. I'm Kevin Wade, and as always, on Mondays, I'm here with Rick Trader, and we've had a heck of a program for these first 2 hours. Start out with J.D. Gordon. He's a longtime friend of the show. And he brought some insight about speculation that's now surfacing about President Obama's intention to bring the worst terrorists in the world into the U.S., where they now will have the comfort and umbrella of any liberal federal judge who orders their release into a community near you, and why this needs to be stopped. And then at 4:05, we had Hans von Spakovsky from our friends at the Heritage Foundation talking about activities of New York State's Attorney General, basically trying to punish ExxonMobil because they haven't subscribed hook, line, and sinker to the left-wing liberal view of man-made climate change and the chilling effect that has on the conduct of business, as well as the good life of free speech in our country. But we're going to have our final guest on here in a minute. We've got some jamming taking place by the NSA at the moment, but we're going to burn through that jamming fog and get our next guest up. It has been it's been a heck of a year, 2015, and as we come down to the final 6 weeks of the year, we're going to stay with you as we always do. And we're going to see some shakeout in the presidential race, my friends. I am looking forward to the debates that are going to be hosted by the Fox Business Network tomorrow night with Neil Cavuto in the central seat. And I'm sure that he will be asking some tough and probing questions that, in fact, are pertinent to the concerns of everyday Americans. So that's going to be tomorrow evening. And I don't have the time in front of me, but please check it out. You're going to see some of the best presidential candidates that the Republican Party has fielded in my lifetime. And they're going to have a contrast in visions that they're going to present. So I think I'm getting a high sign that we actually have our guest on the line.
No, actually, we're going to have to reschedule Edwin. Ian Murray from the Competitive Enterprise Institute. He is out sick today. So as things happen in live radio...
That happens in live radio.
That happens in live radio. So we're going to have to carry it for the next...
well, we could kick in the doors of his sick room and get a microphone in front of him. How about that?
I'm up for that. We'll interview Matteo, find out what's going on at Rowan University. You know, how the students down there, who they are favoring in the presidential. Hey, Matteo, let me ask you, and maybe you could share Kevin's microphone. What's the mood around campus? Are they interested in these debates?
They're feeling the burn.
They're feeling the burn.
I'm not feeling it, but they're feeling it.
And the burn meaning?
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders. The wife and I spent a little bit of time last week walking around the campus of Princeton University. And it was very interesting to see the number of Bernie Sanders buttons on the backs of backpacks. And also, in college towns like that, they have these bulletin boards. And one of the things that I saw that interested me was the effect, or what effect will fracking have on the state of New Jersey? Well, number one, I didn't know there was any fracking going on in the state of New Jersey.
It doesn't matter, Rick. If you're a liberal, you can worry about almost anything.
But I was thinking about how fracking would affect the state of New Jersey. Well, without fracking, we wouldn't have these low gas and oil prices that we have today. Without fracking, there would be a lot of people without jobs. Without fracking, there'd probably be a lot less students at Princeton University because their parents probably couldn't spend the $50,000 or whatever it is to send their kids there. So yeah, there is a big factor as far as what effect fracking has on the state of New Jersey. It is very interesting. So,
well, I'm just reading a headline here talking about living a life of illusions. Ben Nasser Mekdeh, a Tunisian, was first arrested for terrorism charges in 2007. Apparently, tried to hide himself among 200 quote-unquote migrants who are making their way across the Mediterranean to gain entry into Europe. So, and apparently, when he was discovered, the government initially tried to hide the story to avoid alarming us. Well, actually, we understand how alarmed we should be by the terrorists. What we don't understand is how alarmed we should be by our own governmental leaders.
I'm looking at an article right here, Kevin. It is from the Washington Post. And the title of the article is, and I bring this up because we were talking about it a little earlier with our guest, Russian media take climate cue from skeptical Putin. So, judging from this headline, you would say that the media in Russia, differently from the media here in the United States, is taking, well, maybe not. Okay, the media here...
No, I was going to correct you there, Rick. There's no change whatsoever.
Right. Their media is taking a cue from their leader, Vladimir Putin, only Vladimir Putin is very skeptical of this idea of climate change, and so the media there is picking up on this.
So much for journalistic independence, both there and here. Now, I'm not surprised that the media in Moscow is following Putin any more than I would be surprised they followed the Tsar back in 1912. But what I am surprised is that we have lost any semblance of like a free and independent press, at least for the mainstream part here in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to find and interview and tell stories about well-informed, thoughtful, research-based skepticism about man-made global warming. It's not hard to find that, but it is very hard to find any stories in the mainstream press that reflect it.
Well, in this article, it talks about the forest fires in Siberia, and it says here, while Western media have examined the role of rising temperatures and drought in this year's record wildfires in North America, Russian media continued to pay little attention to an issue that animates much of the world. Indifference reflects the widespread public doubt that human activities play a significant role in global warming, a tone set by President Vladimir Putin. Well, once again, in my opinion, I don't look at Vladimir Putin as a good guy by any means, but he, in my opinion, is certainly a better leader of Russia than the leader that we have of the United States.
He certainly loves his country, and he's doing what he does to represent his people in a way that he thinks best represents the people. Now, oddly enough, we have President Barack Obama at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and Lord knows what motivates him. Does he actually wake up in the morning and to say, I made America better yesterday?
No. Also, continuing this article, I think you'll get a big kick out of this. Russia's official view appears to have changed little since 2003, when Putin told an international climate conference that warmer temperatures would mean that Russians, quote, spend less on fur coats, while agricultural specialists say our grain production will increase, and thank God from that. And that, again, is a quote from Vladimir Putin.
Well, I can understand his trying to make lemonade out of lemons, but frankly, it's not warming, Vlad. It's not warming. So you're still not going to have your warm water port in the wintertime. And you better keep making those fur-lined winter coats for the ladies. But in any event, it's actually to tie into this former Soviet Union. I mean, one of the reasons put out there why there was some strange behavior in measured temperatures around the planet back in the early 90s was because hundreds and hundreds of temperature monitoring stations and what you and I will call Siberia were abandoned with the fall of the Soviet Union.
Interesting.
So those temperatures that used to stream in every day in January and February of minus 35, minus 42, those temperatures stopped coming in, and it caused some bit of a distortion in global averages. Again, not mentioned by those on the left.
Again, we want to apologize. We'll have to reschedule. Ian Murray from the Competitive Enterprise Institute has taken ill today and won't be able to be on our show, but we will reschedule him. Kevin, you mind if I take us to the break?
Yeah, go ahead.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Kevin Wade and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network. WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pun and Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, Rebooting Liberty Radio Network, and AM/FM 24/7. Don't go away. Kevin and I will be right back.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
That was Colonel Alan West, a great friend of the show. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm joined by, Rick Trader, program's founder and inspirational leader. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, and who wouldn't, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow. That's ccrshow.com. Or mornings at 9 a.m., log on to Leading Edge Radio Network. At 1 p.m., log on to www.roarradio.net. And at 6 p.m., log on to the Pundit Press, theallendin.com. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any telephone on the planet by simply dialing 832-999-1199. It works great. And depending upon your phone service plan, it doesn't cost you a nickel. So that's 832-999-1199. We were just talking about presidential politics during the break. And I'm of the opinion if the conservatives in this rapidly reshaped Republican Party can actually put together a game plan, they can deliver a crushing defeat to the Democrat Party at the national level that will be so appalling to Democrats, it will result in a redesign and re-engineering of the Democrat Party. And frankly, at this point, no matter which direction they go, it has to not be any further left than it is because they've reached the outer limits already, Rick.
Kevin, I was a little distracted. Sorry. Slight distraction there, Kevin.
And that's our program's founder and inspirational leader, as I've said earlier. That's Rick Trader.
But I would love to see a revolution at the ballot box. I would love to see conservatives come together. The conversation that we had with Hans von Spakovsky about this attorney general in New York who wants to prosecute ExxonMobil because he's saying that they're giving people disinformation by saying there is no such thing as climate change or global warming or man-made causes of it. Just goes to show how important elections are, Kevin. Because if Andrew Cuomo wasn't the governor of New York, you wouldn't have that guy sitting in the Attorney General's office. You wouldn't have this guy making these wild statements, these accusations about ExxonMobil. And I'm not a fan of ExxonMobil. I don't buy their gas. I buy the cheapest gas I can. So I'm not trying to defend them. But as we mentioned while speaking with Hans, who is Big Oil? And Hans told us Big Oil is everybody who's invested in a pension fund, who's invested in the stock market. There's every consumer on earth uses products of ExxonMobil if they know it or not. They use their products. So when you've got an attorney general going after a particular company, who's it hurt? Hurts everybody. And what I'm getting at is elections have consequences. This is going on because there's a governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, is whacked out about this global, man-caused global warming, which there's no proof of.
And to add insult to his own constituents, not that he really cares for his constituents outside of the 5 boroughs of Manhattan and Long Island, that's where he secures his victories. If you take a look at what is called the lower tier of counties in New York State, beautiful countryside, wonderful little villages, but it's the time that land forgot, the land that time forgot, I should say, because they haven't seen prosperity there in 30 and 40 and 50 years. And just a few miles over the border into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there is a raging prosperity because Pennsylvania allows God's gift of natural gas in the Marcellus Shale Formation to actually be brought to the surface to heat our homes. So people a few miles away across the Pennsylvania state line have seen a prosperity that they haven't experienced since the days of anthracite coal in the 1920s, nearly 100 years. But it's coming back to those regions of Pennsylvania. But you cross into Governor Cuomo's Empire State in this what's called the lower tier of counties, and they can't find a job. I mean, outside of hunting season and some seasonal tourist stuff, the young people leave. They just have to leave because there's no place to work. Well, and that's a direct result of liberal policies in Albany in comparison to Harrisburg.
You're right. The young people are leaving to find jobs. They're crossing the border over into Pennsylvania. Yeah, that's where they're going. They're crossing the borders over into Pennsylvania. And it is a beautiful area. And Kevin, do you ever take that drive along Route 6 through Pennsylvania?
Through part of it, yeah.
It is a beautiful, beautiful area. And what you don't see, okay, is the drilling that has gone on and is going on that is saving family farms.
Yeah.
And it's a pristine, it's a beautiful area. And yet you don't see it. And it's saving family farms. It's putting people to work. It's giving jobs. It's a booming area. It's hard to find a hotel room. It's hard to find even a hotel room. Housing is hard to find. Why? Because that's where the jobs are.
Because that's where the jobs are. And even the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, recently found, after spending far too many of the taxpayers' dollars, that they can associate no direct cause of water contamination with fracking. There have been a few isolated instances across the country where a local well has been contaminated, but it's almost non-existent in the face of tens of thousands of wells that have been fracked across this country. And they can find that there is no widespread contamination of drinking water, much to the chagrin and dismay of those on the left side who wanted to show, because they simply believed the gospel, that drinking water is being contaminated everywhere fracking was taking place. But just to reiterate what you were saying, Rick, if you go to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which was a railroad town 100 years ago and was prosperous then, until 10 years ago, it was a fading remnant of its former glory. It was a place where you might be raised, but when you got to be 18, you went to college. When you came out of college, you went someplace else. You did not go back to Williamsport except on Christmas and Thanksgiving to visit family. That's changed now. It's Boomtown, USA, all because they've allowed the people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to benefit from the natural resources under their feet, unlike what Governor Cuomo has done in terms of keeping the wealth of the state of New York away from the hands of the people who need it most, meaning the working folks. Rick, we're coming up on the end of the show. You want to make a goodbye, and I'll sign.
Yes, I want to remind our audience, please log on to Stocking.
And with this caliphate,
Mateo, I'm hearing something.
Part of this also.
Okay, what I wanted to remind our audience of is please log on to stockingsforsoldiers.org, stockingsforsoldiers.org. This is a great organization from your home state, Kevin. You introduced me to them, that they are collecting things and making stockings to send to our servicemen and women overseas. In some cases, this might be the only gift they get this Christmas season. Stockingsforsoldiers.org. Every dime, every article collected by them goes to make sure that this mission is accomplished. No one takes a salary. No one takes an income. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, which means your donation is tax deductible. Kevin, I want to thank you for introducing me to them. And we're going to go over sometime next week. We're going to
go over there and stuff some stockings and be a part of helping out our men and women in uniform on remote assignment. Hey, Rick, it's always a pleasure. God bless, Godspeed, and may God save the United States of America.
You're listening to Rebooting Liberty Radio Network. Compelling and entertaining talk.
Don't touch that dial.